Yeah. Yo, welcome back to another edition of the Men Who Cry podcast. Like, subscribe, review, tell a friend and 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 tell a friend. But first, we got to start with that team down in Philadelphia who I do not know if a team who in the last 12 months won a Super Bowl, had his franchise player be Super Bowl MVP, won his division, had a home playoff game, and have more miserable fans. That is right, y'all. The Philadelphia Eagles got their ass kicked by the San Francisco 49ers. They have now gone home. We have a lot of things going wrong with this team. A.J. Brown, the man that kept pouting the whole time, was not only dropping passes, he didn't want to talk to the media after the game. Nick Sirianni was screaming at that man, calling him everything besides a God's child when he had to go back to the bench. Jalen Hurts looked terrible in that game, and they lost to a 49ers team that people, I think, need to have name tags walking around to know who the players were. None of this is really surprising. And I think the reason why none of this is really surprising for them is because this has kind of been their MO the entire season, right? They were winning a bunch of games. They have, and I still feel at the time, they have the most talent, definitely in the league at that point. You have 2 Pro Bowl wide receivers. You have a Pro Bowl running back. You have an All-Pro, you have an All-Pro running back. You have three Pro Bowl level defensive players in the secondary, 2 of them being white. And they just look like a team that completely combusted. This, to me, while I am typically more of a guy who's like, listen, the players play, they get paid the most money, right? Like, they're the guys out there, they're the ones who are at it to perform. But if your job at Nick Sirianni is you don't call the plays, you don't run the defense, you don't run the offense, you're not a special teams coach, you have to be the vibes guy and the culture setter. And the fact that A.J. Brown has essentially been bitching about Jalen Hurts for well over a year. These complaints were not happening just this offseason or just this postseason. This happened last postseason. And he never quelled the flames. And the reason why is not because I think Nick Sirianni they don't listen to Nick Sirianni per se in terms of what he actually is saying. I don't think they respect him. And the reason why I don't think they respect him is Nick Sirianni has to be the most unprofessional coach I've ever seen. And it's not the tit for tat that he had with A.J. Brown the sideline, right? Those things happen. It's football. You're in the middle of a heated battle. I've seen plenty of coaches scream at, especially their wide receivers on the sideline and whatever. It's a moment in time. It's the time of him yelling back at the fans, his own fans last season, when I think they were either they barely beat the Browns or something like that. Him walking up the tunnel, talking to Bills fans about them losing, talking to the Chiefs fans when he was walking back when they beat Kansas City. I believe that was last year, or maybe that was even earlier this year. He is just annoying. And he's supposed to be the boss. The issue that happens with this team is directly because of that. Now, things might change, but it doesn't seem like Nick Sirianni is getting fired. It seems like what they're going to do is going to fire their offensive coordinator and bring in a new offensive coordinator. And that might be it. But here's the thing. They're going to get rid of A.J. Brown. They're going to find a new guy to bring in or whatever, right? He won't be on the team next year. And I give a lot of credit to Jalen Hurts for being kind of like the adult in the room, like the young CEO of listen, this guy I think is a little bit of a clown, but I have to kind of deal with this man to get the things that I want. As much as people want to try and put this all on Jalen Hurts, I don't think it's actually all on him. While he is not a franchise quarterback, he's clearly a quarterback that can get you to the Super Bowl and obviously excel playing in the Super Bowl, not winning one. But the whole noise of the Eagles was unbearable. And the fact that they essentially got completely outplayed and outcoached at home is unacceptable. So that's just how it went and how it's done for the Eagles this season. Which, if I'm being completely honest, thank you God. There are very few teams that I truly like despise. Right? As much as I want to get into this business, and I try to give my opinions and try to be as level-headed. There's a lot of teams that if they win, fine. If they lose, fine. Oh, but that does not count for the Eagles. Oh, I was dancing on their graves, and it feels so good when those guys lose. Moving on, past those losers, moving to a guy who's throwing on his cape and might have to do so to get to the playoffs. On this pod, as we did with Reek, I picked the Jags and I picked the Rams to meet in the Super Bowl. We got one of those teams still alive. The reason why I picked the Jaguars was because I felt as if they could get by Buffalo, and if they went to Denver, they already showed they could win in Denver, and I'm not necessarily so sold on the idea of, Bo Nix balling out in the postseason like this. So the reason why I was a little bit of, I guess, afraid of Buffalo was just because I was like, this dude, Josh Allen, just might throw on a cape and might be able to go ahead and win them the game. And that's frankly what they did. His defense got gashed the entire time running the ball. I don't think Liam Cohen coached a bad game per se. I don't think he's obviously like the best, but it was a game that could have went either way. And Josh Allen just did Josh Allen things. Like there can be some glazing that goes along, you could say, in the NFL media in that way, but I'm sorry. That dude is the best quarterback in the league right now. Everyone listed, you're taking this guy, right? He's throwing to God. I didn't know Brandon Cooks was on the team. Brandon Cooks done play for everybody and their mama. And he's on the team and caught the pass that got them into on the other side of the 50. And Sean McDermott was about this close to end up filing his job application and trying to coach the New York Giants, but he didn't, right? Because Josh Allen is just that good. I think that this team can get to the Super Bowl. It's really tough because I think their run defense is really bad, but the path for them now to get through there is to go to Denver rather and beat Bo Nix. Denver is not a great rushing team, so it might not be so hard for them. And this dude might just have to say, get on my back, boys. I'm taking you to the promised land. Okay? And it's odd because I don't necessarily feel like he has to do it because, again, there's a lot more team aspect to this. But he's the best quarterback, definitely on that side. He's probably the best quarterback in the playoffs. And the expectation is going to be like, yo, this dude might actually be the guy to get you and win the Super Bowl, right? Or at least get you to the Super Bowl. So Josh Allen putting his cape back on and trying to show you guys that he is that dude for what is set to transpire. Okay. Going to take a quick break and then going to come back to talk to you guys about all the games that took place on Saturday night. Okay. Back at it to here to talk to you guys about the game, probably the game of the day, probably definitely the two games of the weekends. Chicago Bears, tough loss for the Packers there, but Caleb Williams, I think, has shown you so far, right, in just 2 seasons now, 2 seasons plus he's now entering his postseason run, that he definitely has a chance to be one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the league at some point in his career, right? Obviously, it won't be right now. He's still kind of coming up in his career, but that guy, this is, let me take a step back here, right? I have an argument with someone a lot, right? It's not necessarily about football. It's about basketball a lot of times. And a lot of times he throws a lot of numbers at me, right? You got to check out this guy's numbers and like these guys' scores and how much they're like plus minuses and things of that nature, right? And my retort to always him is that this is sports. This is not calculus. The reason why I say that is numbers can lie. Stats are simply just a record of what transpired in the game. they do not define the game, or they do not define how good or bad a player can be. I remember a lot of times people talked about way back in the day, when the Knicks had Tyson Chandler was on the team. And Tyson Chandler was on the team, and then Phil Jackson took over. And then they ended up trading him to the Dallas Mavericks. And they got back Samuel Dalembert. I'll never forget, like, thinking about that trade. And I remember people just being like, yeah, like, you know, Samuel Dalembert, Tyson Chandler, I believe, averaged the exact same amount of points. I think they both averaged about 10, a little over 10 points a game. And for anyone who watched the Knicks that season, understood that Samuel Dalembert was terrible. He was terrible the whole year. And a lot of it you just realize was those 10 points a game came in a very different aspect versus when they had Tyson Chandler on the team. And what I mean by that is you can't simply determine how good a player played by looking at the box score. You cannot just be box score watching. You have to watch this guy play. Caleb Williams did not necessarily have a great statistical game. He threw some picks. He was under 50% completion percentage. He had the worst completion percentage of any starter this season. However, if you watch him play, he has magic. He has that thing you can't teach. He has a thing that makes everyone fall in love with sports. He makes the impossible become believable. And the throw he made on the 4th and 8, where essentially he's rolling to the left and he throws it to Rome Odunze and just drops it in the bucket. The fact that Rome, it's not like, I'm not saying obviously he has to make the catch, right? But he caught it right into his chest. It wasn't even like he had to make some one-handed grab and make a great play on it. It landed right in the bucket. I don't see how this guy will not be one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the game going further. I just don't believe that they are going to go much further this season, because as much as these comebacks are great and how much these are going forward, I do not think I think at some point this will come back to bite them. You cannot just keep going down by multiple touchdowns and then finding a way to come back and win these games. That to me is going to be too tough. But he is an outstanding player. I love the fact that Ben Johnson hates Matt LaFleur. I mean, he hates that man with a passion. I don't know what beef those two got going on, but he has been sending diss tracks to him since he got the job. Okay. And Matt LaFleur, my brother, you lucky that you in Green Bay, you're not in New York or one of these bigger cities, because that was a collapse of epic proportions. That's one of those you get fired on the tarmac type of firings, you know, tied up in games. I think Matt LaFleur is a really good coach. I wouldn't advocate for firing him. I think the Packers are in a good place. And I think going forward, it's going to be interesting to see how these two teams kind of keep going back and forth, because every game that these two teams played was nirvana. Okay. And the fact that there is like a real deep, genuine level of hatred just makes it all better, right? There's always rivalry in sports. There's also a lot of times where it's just those two teams play a lot, right? The hammer and the nail cannot have a rivalry since one is always beating the other. But one thing that a rivalry will always give you is pure, unabashed hate. These teams hate each other. Shout out to the Bears. On to round 2. Packers are now done for the year, and we'll see what they'll be able to do in the off season. Moving over to the final game that we had, at least of note, was the Panthers versus the Rams. A game where I thought was going to be a blowout, but one of those big things that I don't love to trust. Double-digit favorite on the road. It's always tough to beat, right? That's the one thing about the NFL, man. Double-digit team on the road. It's always tough for that team to win that game, let alone cover that game. But the Rams walked down the Panthers. Bryce Young played outstanding. That's the best I've seen Bryce Young play, honestly, I think since college. You know, one of the things I always trust about players, just in general, is when they got money on the line, they somehow find a new way to lock in, right? And Bryce Young is already being reported that his 5th-year option will be picked up. I don't know if he's going to get an extension per se off this game or if they're going to let him play it out. But I know a dude who's like, I need some new money soon, trying to go in there and get himself a nice little check. So Bryce Young played outstanding in that game. Fortunately, that game has gone to the Rams, who will be going to face the Bears, actually, in the game we were just talking about. I do believe in this Rams team a lot. I think that this team is going to get to Super Bowl, and I believe they're going to win the Super Bowl because I believe that they're a fully complete team, even though their special teams, I think, is wonky at best. These are the type of games where you see your quarterback really step up and you see a quarterback show you that he's the MVP of the league in Matthew Stafford, able to walk down the Carolina Panthers, get into the end zone, and eventually, win the game from that point and just give a great game. There are a lot of times especially the first round of these in the wild card weekends where you expect it to be a lot of blowouts. Not only there really wasn't any blowout, and every game was compelling, really outside of the Patriots game with the Chargers, which that game was interesting in its own sense, in the sense of that it was a defensive battle, but the Patriots were never really able to pull away from the Chargers, even though they were never threatened by the Chargers. They kind of kept the even kill the whole time. And now we have a new setting of teams right now. Obviously, we're recording this before the Texans versus the Steelers game. By the time you hear this, we will know who the final AFC team will be. That team will be taking on the Patriots in the next round. And we'll see how that's going to go. I'm picking the Texans. Reek on this pod picked the Texans to get to Super Bowl, which now means that the Steelers are going to win this game and kind of have that be the way it goes. But this has been a great first step of the playoffs because everyone, especially now, feels like they could win it, right? Everyone can at least conceivably believe that this is our year to get to the Super Bowl. And it is just a very interesting way to see how this year is playing out, right? The fact that you have all these teams, a lot of the normal characters that we see in the playoffs, from Lamar, Burrow, those guys are out. Mahomes, obviously. And it's now time for these new guys to kind of come through and step up and make their own way. And now that the Super Bowl champions are out, we are really now going to see who has the goods coming this year. And we'll just see how that's about to transpire. All right, we're going to take one more break, and then we're going to hit one more topic for. All right, welcome back. So the last little bit that we want to talk about is the events that took place, or honestly, they're still taking place in Minnesota last week, rather. It's been about a week this has happened. A woman was killed by an ICE agent in Minnesota. She was actually shot in the face multiple times and died. And it's an interesting kind of point where the people who say that they love everyone and want things to be better are the same ones who are openly okay with people being murdered. When I saw the story initially, because I saw I don't know if I saw a tweet about it. I don't exactly remember how I came to it. I saw a woman was killed. My first thought was, and I'm going to be completely honest, and this is a little bit callous, is I hope she's American. And the reason why I thought that was because I know that people do not care about the lives of immigrants anymore, right? We have now successfully created a two-tier system in the sense of if you are simply not of a certain color, you have a different lifestyle than other people here. And this has now gotten to a place where I think we have simply lost all recognition of understanding what people are. And it has now gotten to a breaking point where I just think you can only push people so far, right? You can only push people and threaten people and hurt people only so much until they start doing something bad. Normally, I would have some like funny, you know, sports analogy to kind of make this into. There is none. And there is simply no other way to look at this in the sense of the government, a government organization murdered an American citizen. And the government is telling you that what you saw did not happen. There are only very few countries that I can remember reading about in history where that took place. And once you've kind of allowed yourself to believe that, frankly, just killing someone in cold blood who didn't have a weapon, who wasn't threatening anyone, deserves to die, is ultimately a place where we are just not going back. And I oftentimes think about this in the sense of, okay, how do you move forward? How do you maintain? I don't have those type of answers. But the one thing I do know is that this right here is unsustainable. Okay. And the level of desire for bloodshed is scary to see. I do not believe anyone should be murdered per se. I don't think anyone should be murdered, especially the fact that they were just in their car. And the fact that people are so quick to just be okay with it and saying that it's justified shows a level of it shows a real point of the loss of morality, right? You would think someone would be better than this, but they simply do not want people to hear and see what is going on in the world. I wish we could have ended more on a lighter note, but that is the Men Who Cry podcast. Again, please like, subscribe, review, tell everyone about it, and I'll see you guys later this week. All right, everyone. Peace out.